Hello. In this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to do the two-colour alternating invisible cast-on for double knitting, particularly in this case for double knitting in the round. I use this for most of my double knitting projects, and in particular in this case for my vanishing point hat, which you can see in the corner over here. It gives a fantastic, seamless, tidy edge to the double knitting. It looks very much like the two sides of the fabric have been grafted together with Kitchener stitch, which is very neat and tidy indeed. And it starts with two yarns. I've got black and white, and you just tie the two together into a slip knot to start with. To work a slip knot, I always wrap my yarns around my thumb like so, make a little V, go down in between there, pick up the two yarns and pull tight, and I have a nice tidy slip knot. This slip knot is not going to be counted as one pair of stitches. We're going to slip it off later on, but it's just there to hold everything nice and steady. Now what's really important about this cast on is deciding which yarn you want to have as your background colour or your main colour on the facing side fabric. That's the one that you'll be knitting with. Obviously in the round you only work on one side of the fabric, you don't switch backwards and forward like you do in flat knitting. So I want to have the white yarn as my background yarn on the facing side of the fabric, so I'm going to make sure that I've got that draped over the finger and the other yarn, the black one, is over the thumb. How did I do that? I grab hold of both of the yarns with my fingers there, and with my forefinger and my thumb I come down in between them, spread them out like that. Now to pick up the stitches, there's a couple of little swipes you do with the needle, and I'll try to demonstrate them as clearly as I possibly can. First of all, you bring the tip of the needle towards you, going round in front of the black yarn, and then up through the centre between the two, and then round the back of the white, and come underneath both yarns and up to the top again. That gives us a white stitch on the needle. To continue, we go round the back of the white, down under both this time, coming up to the top again around the front there you see, and then down through the centre of both yarns and come back up behind the white yarn, and that has given me my first pair of stitches. Ignore these two, those are from the slip knot, but I've got a white and a black, and obviously we want the white one to be first because that's the one we'll be knitting with, and we'll be purling with the black when we come to working in the round. Let me show you that again. Down around the front of the black, up through the middle, round the back of the white, under both, and up to the top. Continue round the back of both, all the way under, up the front of the black, down through the centre, out through the back, and back up to the top. And I've got another pair of stitches there. I always try to simplify this and make it into one fluid movement rather than all of those different stages. If I combine the two, it looks a little bit like this. Down round the black, up through the middle, over the white, and round. Keep going round all the way until you come up the front, down through the middle, and then up at the back. Show you that again. Down the front, up the middle, down the back, round the front, down the back, round the front, round the front, down through the middle, and up at the back. So if you get really, really quick at this, you can end up just going 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's really, really fast. So I'll slow it down for you again. Down the front, up the middle, down the back, up the front, down the back, up the front, down the middle, up the back. What's really important is you make sure that you get this, all the twisted bits at the bottom, that they stay at the bottom of the needle. You want to make sure everything is nice and tight and nice and snug, otherwise things twist around the needle and you get into all sorts of problems. So if we continue with this, we'll do another one down the front, up the middle, down the back, up the front, down the back, up the front, down the middle, and up the back. To break it down into the two separate sets of stitches again, we go down in front of the black, and we come up between the two yarns, go round the back of the white, and come up to the front. That gives us the first one. Then we go down behind the white, up in front of both, down through the centre, and up behind the white. That gives us a black stitch. With working this in the round, it's really important that we do it in two separate stages. If, for example, your pattern calls for you to cast on, I don't know, 40 pairs of stitches, you would only want to cast on 20 pairs of stitches before moving on to the next stage. So whatever half the number of your total number of pairs is to be for the pattern, that's the number you'll cast on. And ignoring my slip knot, which is there, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pairs of stitches. So let's cast on another one and make it a nice round 10. Down the front, up the middle, round again, round one more time, down the centre and up the back. So there we are, I have 10 pairs of stitches. So here we have our 10 pairs of stitches nicely cast on, black, white, black, white, black, white, all the way down the needle. So we need to continue now, and in order to do that I want to slide these 10 stitches all the way down this needle onto the cable and onto the needle tip at the other end. So in order to do that without losing what we've got, I'm going to give a little extra twist to the yarns at the front, bringing the finger towards me underneath like that. Then I can transfer those stitches into my left hand and hold them really, really securely between my thumb and my fingers like that, pulling the top of the needle there, bringing it all the way down the cable and pulling those stitches onto the other needle at the bottom. Then what I need to do is go back to holding the yarns exactly as I had them before, with the white yarn over my finger and the black yarn over my thumb, just like so. At this point I'm going to bring the other needle tip into play, and we're going to stick it across the top of the last stitches we made there in a cross style fashion like that, and pinch it nice and securely, hold it there with thumb and forefinger, and now we're ready to carry on casting on, now onto this other needle tip. So we go down the front, up the middle, down the back, up the front, down the back, up the front, down the middle, and up the back. At this point it's a good idea to really give everything a nice little tug and keep those stitches nice and close to each other so we don't have any large gaps between any of the cast on stitches, and we continue as we did before. Let's go down the front, up the middle, down the back, up the front, up the front, down the back, up the front, down the middle, and up the back. Snug, snug, snug. Continue exactly as you have been doing so until you get the required amount of pairs of stitches on your needle, keeping them nice and snug each time. See how they're building up there, and we've got some on the original ones on that needle and the new ones on the new needle. And there I have it, 10 pairs of stitches and 10 pairs of stitches. The next stage is about joining our work in the round and making sure we can have everything close into a nice little circle and knit in the round exactly as the pattern dictates. So in order to do that, what I want to do is I'm going to give these stitches at the front an extra little twist again to make sure they don't come unravelled. We can sort that out later. And then I'm going to lie my two lots of stitches next to each other with the twisted bits at the bottom of each needle facing into the centre like that. So what I've got here is I've got my live yarns on this needle and I've got my tail yarns on this one. They're a little bit out in the way at the moment, so I'm just going to tuck them down between and pull those tails out of the way. So in order to start knitting now, as double knitting dictates, we want to set up our yarns however you like to tension them. I'm a two-handed double knitter, so I have one yarn in my left and one yarn in my right, and I alternate between the two as I need to change the colours. So I'm just going to push that needle tip in, that's the left one, and I'm going to pull the right one out, because this is the needle I'm going to start working with. Pull the right needle out and pop it into, move the camera back, pop it into the first stitch, which as we predicted was going to be our slip stitch there, so we don't want that. We're going to pull that one off. I'm going to leave it tied for now as a slip stitch because it holds everything in place, but we're certainly not going to knit into it. We're going to knit into the first actual stitch, and then using the white yarn, bring it round, pull nice and tight, and knit with it. Bring both yarns to the front. There's the white one, there's the black one coming through. Again, pull that one nice and snug so that we don't get a massive ladder at the join between the two sides. And then I'm going to purl. There. We have it. I always do the first two stitches of each needle individually like that before I pop the yarns where I want them for tensioning purposes. Then once I've got those nice and snug and tight with no danger of massive ladders, I can pull on them as much as I want to there, keep everything nice and tidy. Then I can set up for double knitting as I would normally do. And to do that, I'm just going to knit with the white, bring the yarns to the front, and purl with the black. Yarns to the back, knit with the front, knit with the white, yarns forward, purl with the black yarn, and yarn back. Continue doing this all the way along to the end of your I've come to the end of my first needle of my first round, and I just want to show you what it's like at this stage, because the cast on stitches that we haven't yet worked are now on the cable rather than on the needle, and there's not much there to keep them nice and tight because the cable is much thinner than the needle itself. So it can get a little bit hairy at this point to continue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the cable down and bring those stitches onto the needle. Now at this point you often find that things get a little bit twisted up and they need a little bit of careful coaxing to make sure they're still coming onto the needle white, black, or whichever order you want them. It is easily done. It's not too fiddly. It can get a little bit tricksy if you've got fat needles and thin cables like I have here to get them onto the fattest part of the needle. So just maybe with your nail one at a time bring them up onto that section there. See, I'm struggling a bit, but it will go on. I know it does because they came off of it in the first place. There we go. So now I've pushed that needle down, I'm going to pull out the other needle and I can continue knitting in the round. As I did before, I always find it a good idea not to start with my hands as I would normally. You see I've got quite a lot of spare loose yarn here, but what I can do is I have them individually wrapped like this. I can make sure that's all pulled nice and tightly there, and then I can knit that first stitch, bring the yarn forward, go to the back and get the other yarn, bring that forward too, tensioning it as much as I need to get rid of any slack, and then purling that stitch, taking the yarns back, keeping it nice and tight as I go, take the other yarn to the back, and then set up for double knitting the way I like to do it, one yarn tensioned in each hand. And then continue. Knit with the white, yarns forward, purl with the black. I'll see you when I've done a couple more rounds. Here we are after knitting a couple of rounds further on than we were before, and you can see that I'm starting to get a little tube effect happening with white on the outside, exactly as we wanted by having the white yarn over the finger, not the thumb, and black is on the inside. And if we have a little look in close-up at the edge, you'll see there's no seam at all. It looks like the fabric just rolls round from one side, from the white to the other. And all the stitches in there are exactly as you'd expect to see them in a Kitchener stitch. It's also incredibly stretchy. There's loads and loads of give on this cast on. You can see just how much there, which makes it great for hats and things like that that need a lot of stretch and give. So it's a really, really fantastic cast on. It looks great, I think you'll agree, and although it's a little bit tricksy to do, it's definitely worth the effort. It makes a very, very nice, clean, tidy cast on for your double knit project, and after a couple of attempts, I'm sure you'll be up and about with no trouble at all.